What is up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Weekend Roundup here on Touchline Talk. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the content going up on the channel. Not my favorite thing to do, but after what has transpired this weekend in both England and Spain, there's going to be a lot of referee talk here, beginning with the Madrid derby. It ends 1-1. That is not really the story. The story is the penalty that Atletico Madrid got to take the lead in this game and ultimately leave with a point. I have said this time and time again. I want to focus on another aspect, another angle of this. But part of the solution here is raising the bar when it comes to what a clear and obvious error means and actually taking those words literally. I do want to reemphasize that again. In no way, shape, or form was that a foul. In fact, I would have been okay if that would have been a clear and obvious error in the other direction had the penalty been given. I would have argued it was a clear and obvious error that VAR should have overturned to not give the penalty, not the other way around. And of course, this comes immediately after Real Madrid sends their letter complaining about the officiating. La Liga President Javier Tebas says they've lost their minds. That is the backdrop to this game. And that incident and that baffling call happened. And this was just about the worst case scenario for Tebas and La Liga and everybody involved. Because not only do you have this inexplicable decision that goes against Real Madrid and is exactly the kind of thing Real Madrid is going to point to and use as quote-unquote proof that they're being treated unfairly and discriminated against by the referees. But that goal then ends up mattering a great deal because Real Madrid actually show up in the second half, create some chances, get a goal. You started hearing Vinicius and Bellingham getting involved. Is involved in Mbappe's goal, nearly has another one. Vinicius has some really good moments. Mbappe obviously gets the goal. Real Madrid were the better team in the second half. And so it ends in a draw. That goal, that penalty that should not have been awarded, could quite possibly end up deciding or playing a big role in the way that this title race plays out. And I don't know what the justifiable explanation for it is. It was simply one of the worst uses of VAR I've ever seen. At the same time, Real Madrid didn't do anything in the first half. I will continue to be hard on Real Madrid, who continue to do this kind of thing in these big games and don't actually play up to their potential. They were much better in the second half. They certainly deserved a point. Over the 90 minutes, they deserved all three. They only got one. It happens. But if you are La Liga, if you are Javier Tebas, you can't just brush this away. You have got to own this and acknowledge that something went horribly wrong, or provide a really good explanation nobody has thought of as to why that penalty was given, why that goal was allowed to happen. That does not mean Real Madrid's behavior is okay. It's the same way I felt about all of the stuff with the Ballon d'Or. It should be beneath a club of Real Madrid stature to act that way. It is petulant. It's ridiculous. And I'm still waiting for the public apology to Rodri, considering how Manchester City's season has gone. This idea that the fact that he won the Ballon d'Or was just, criminal. It was ridiculous. Their behavior was ridiculous. Their behavior with the referees is ridiculous. But after that, Real Madrid are not going to be the ones to go try and mend the fences here. This is all nonsense. Everybody needs to behave better. And so both things can be true. Real Madrid's behavior is unacceptable, and they have every right to be furious about that call. And so the first step to actually getting this figured out and putting an end to this nonsense is for there to be an acknowledgement that Real Madrid caught a really bad break that shouldn't, and that goal should not have happened. And then Real Madrid need to be mature about it and understand that things happen sometimes. But the bottom line is they also could have played more aggressively and actually pressed and been on the front foot the way they were in the second half and the first half. And maybe this is a moot point because they score a goal. It's 1-1 at halftime. They win the second half. They get their goal and they win 2-1. That is part of this too. Both things can be and are true. So I don't want to just make this about the refereeing, but that was the biggest story. And it was in part because the president of La Liga said in a very not nice way that there was no merit behind what Real Madrid were saying. And then this happened. The refereeing has to be better. Real Madrid need to behave better. Those are not mutually exclusive things. But the bottom line in terms of the game is Real Madrid played well. They stepped up in the second half. The team happier with the point is Atleti. No question. This title race is very much still up for grabs. It really could have swung one way or the other if somebody had won. But you got the draw. The talking point is the refereeing needs to be better. You'd hope Real Madrid would act like a club of their pedigree and status should. And we see how the rest of the season plays out because this is hopefully going to go down to the very end. And hopefully we're not going to sit here in a couple months talking about that call. But it's a reality situation. I'm not going to try and defend it because I have no explanation. All that being said, it was very interesting to have that happen almost exactly 24 hours after what happened at Old Trafford. And this is really where I want to focus the conversation and put these two incidents into conversation with each other. Because, unfortunately, this is a weekend where we're talking about refereeing and refereeing controversies. Harry Maguire's winner in stoppage time for Manchester United to advance in the FA Cup and beat Leicester City. It does not look that at any point during that play he was onside. Before the ball was kicked, while the ball was being kicked, which is obviously the only one that really matters, that should be about as easy as a call can be for an assistant referee to make. And they missed it. At least every angle I have seen, every person who has seen it, it appears to be clear as day. Maybe there's something that we all missed that the AR saw. I think it's much more likely, with no VAR, that we all got to see something afterward that the AR missed in real time because ARs are human and make mistakes. I say that to once again make the argument. The world is a better place because VAR is in it. That does not mean VAR is perfect or anywhere near good enough. You just saw what happened in one of the most important games of the La Liga season. That was one of the worst uses of VAR I have ever seen. I will still take that all day over knowing you got a call wrong, or it certainly looks like it, and not having to go out of the FA Cup. And if you're Ruud van Nistelrooy, having an opportunity to win at Old Trafford taken away from you because we didn't bother to put the technology in there that could have given us a second chance to get that right. It also protects referees and gives referees an opportunity to explain their call. right? We've had some very controversial ones where there has been an explanation then provided. Whether you agree with it or not is a different conversation. But there is at least an explanation as to why, because you got to review it, you got to look at it again, you got a second set of eyes on it. There is an explanation and there's an accountability there. Because you have an opportunity to change the call, you have an opportunity to look at it again. I think we take VAR a little bit for granted and we just complain about the parts of it that aren't working well yet. Because we don't have incidents like what happened at Old Trafford anymore because we use VAR. It's easy to forget how frustrating and infuriating it is to just lose or have a win turned into a draw because a human made a mistake that could have been fixed, that they would have wanted back. I will take VAR and all of its flaws every single day over those kind of incidents. And the other thing I'll say about the Real Madrid situation too, the referee on the field also can do a much better job. We can do a much better job actually with the process of VAR because I believe it is seriously flawed still. I've been saying that time and time again. The on-field referee can also have some more courage and not just go along with whatever the VAR said. There are certainly ways to improve this. But 90% of the time, it's very, very helpful. It prevents the kind of things like what happened at Old Trafford from occurring. Yes, you don't always like it. Is it always used correctly? No. And as I've also been saying from the beginning, the point is not to get the call right. That is an improper framing of what this is supposed to do. And that is part of the problem as well. But I will just 100 times out of 100 take a Real Madrid situation over a Leicester City situation. We saw both of them this weekend. That really reinforced to me why VAR is so valuable and why we have to stick with it and keep pushing for it to get better rather than scrapping it and saying the old way was better. I will just never buy that argument. A couple other things real quickly here. Liverpool bow out to Plymouth Argyle in the FA Cup. I have no takeaways here. That was a very, very, very weak Liverpool side relative to what they could have put out there. I mean, Federico Chiesa was out there. Harvey Elliott was out there. You can go down the list. Not to just highlight, though, I really actually like Harvey Elliott. Just to highlight where we are in terms of the squad selection that Arne Slot had there. This was not a priority, nor should it have been. If you get into the deeper rounds because you take care of business, then great. We have a conversation about, okay, if the quadruple still in play, how do we balance this? But you can't be thinking about that right now. You've got Champions League to deal with. You just had to make sure you got into the the Carabao Cup final earlier this week, which, by the way, you entered the second leg losing. That's why you played your first team squad in that game. And they go out on a penalty. I don't know what Harvey Elliott was doing. It's a bad moment, a strange play. It's not like they got played off the field by Plymouth Argyle. These things happen when you don't play a strong team in the cup. They could have sent it to extra time. I just don't have too much. This is why it's so hard to win a quadruple and nobody does it. Things like this happen. It would be a different conversation if this was a priority and that was a first team out there that couldn't generate much against the worst team in the championship. That's not what we're talking about here. So the quest for the quadruple is over. I personally feel like we are way too early to be talking about that anyway. Haven't even started the knockout round of the Champions League. There are 0 trophies secured at this point. I mean, I would probably put the over-under at 2.1. They're going to be favorites in the Carabao Cup final. They are clearly favorites to win the Premier League. I do think they're going to end up with, I'll say, 2 trophies. But 2 and 4 is a huge difference. So I don't, to me, there is nothing to take away from this. It happened. Okay, we're not going to have a quadruple. I don't think that would have happened anyway. And I have no issue with what Arnie Slot did. You got to prioritize. And credits point with Argyle, really cool moment. Knocking the best team in the world out of a competition. Good for them. Not the end of the world by any means for Liverpool. I have zero concerns about this whatsoever. The other game I wanted to mention real fast. Tottenham, Aston Villa. Villa score immediately. Dominate the first half. Spurs are a little bit better in the second half, but get outplayed. Villa deserving winners. Spurs bow out of 2 cup competitions in a matter of days, which leaves them with one thing that matters this season outside of avoiding relegation, and that is your European competition. Whereas this time last week, you're talking about an opportunity to be getting to a cup final, an opportunity to continue in the FA Cup, right? This season was about cups. Now it is about a cup, a competition. And it's just becoming harder and harder to defend Ange. It is one thing to play really well and to lose 4-3 or 3-2 and feel like you're unlucky. And if you actually had your full strength squad, you would be more solid defensively. Mickey Van de Ven is that important to what we do. They're nowhere near full strength, of course. That would be one thing. They've lost all these 1-goal games. There is something to that. But these 2 performances in 2 of the most important games they have played all season, I don't care who's missing. You had Son out there. You had Dejan Kulusevski. You had pieces. You just brought in Matthias Tell. He scored the goal to cut the deficit at the very end and give Spurs a slimmer of hope. There are enough attacking players here. To get so thoroughly outplayed, to be so flat, to not do any of the things that Ange is supposed to do is the most concerning part of this to me. In the most important games you're playing. This is about the cups. They were probably always going to lose that second leg to Liverpool. But they didn't even put up a fight. There's no shame in losing to Aston Villa. But they barely got going in the game. Villa could have been 3-0 up by then. If Ange isn't doing the things Ange is supposed to do, what is he doing? He's not just getting results that aren't pretty. It's the opposite. But then he's not even doing that because he's not delivering the performances right now. Is there a better alternative? I don't know. But it goes back to this point that I've really started to harp on the past year or so. You know what you are getting at this point. Same thing at Manchester United. And it's some really good performances, an occasional great win, some really frustrating games. You're not getting the results you probably deserve because you're so open defensively. And then you're getting some lethargic stuff. And it seems to be trending in that direction. So if you're Daniel, and Spurs fans are obviously going more after Daniel Levy than after Ange. But if Daniel Levy's the guy in charge, are you okay with this? Because this was the week. And this was the game after you bow out to Liverpool. Can you find a way to get a win against a very good Villa team in the FA Cup to keep that alive? They've had success against City. Liverpool just excused themselves from the competition. There was an opportunity for Spurs here. And they fell flat again. How many more times are Spurs going to allow this to happen before we're having a serious conversation about Ange's job security? Because I don't even know that we're at that point yet. But if he's not doing the things he was brought there to do and that you associate with him, what is he doing? Because it's not winning and getting results. It's always been about more than that. But that more than that is not there right now. That is all for this edition of the Weekend Roundup. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, be sure to hit the subscribe button, and I will see you next time.